I'm going to tell you something that most people don't know what to do with when they hear it. A doctor looked me in the eye, 3 years ago, and told me I had 6 months to live. 6 months. He said it calm, like he was reading from a grocery list. And I sat there in that little room with the paper on the table that crinkles every time you move, and I thought, well, that's that then. My name is George. George Harold Mitchell. I'm 91 years old. Born 1934 in a small town in rural Pennsylvania, not far from Pittsburgh. My father was a steelworker. My mother raised 4 kids and never once complained about it, not once that I heard anyway. I've lived a long life. A real long life. And I'm sitting here today because my granddaughter Lily, bless that girl, she said, "Grandpa, people need to hear your story." And I said, "What story? I'm just an old man who didn't die when he was supposed to." And she laughed and said, "That's exactly the story." So here I am, talking to a camera. At 91. Lord help me. So let me take you back. 3 years ago. I was 88 at the time, sitting in a doctor's office in what I thought was just a routine appointment. I'd been feeling tired. More tired than usual. And I'd had some pain that I kept telling myself was nothing, the way men of my generation do. We don't complain. We don't make a fuss. You feel bad, you walk it off. That's just how we were raised. But Lily, she pushed me to go in. She drove me herself because she knew if she left it to me, I'd find a reason not to. And the doctor ran some tests, and then he ran more tests, and then he sat down across from me with that look on his face. You know that look. The careful one. And he said the words. Serious cardiac condition. Complications. 6 months, maybe a little more if things went well. Maybe less if they didn't. I didn't cry. I want you to know that. Not in that office. I just nodded real slow, the way you do when someone tells you something your body already knew but your brain wasn't ready to accept. I shook the doctor's hand. I thanked him, which I still think is a strange thing to do when someone just told you that you're dying, but that's what I did. And then I walked out to the parking lot where Lily was waiting, and she took one look at my face and she knew. And she started to cry and I put my arm around her and I said, "Now stop that. I've had 88 good years. That's more than most people get." And I believed it when I said it. At least I thought I did. But then I went home. And that's when it hit me. Not the dying part. I want to be clear about that. It wasn't the idea of death that got me. I'm 91 years old. I've buried my wife, my brother, 2 of my closest friends, more people than I can count. Death and I were not strangers. What got me was something else entirely. What got me was the list. You know what I mean by the list? The things you keep telling yourself you'll get to. Someday. One day. When things slow down. When the weather's better. When you feel up to it. I had that list in my head and it was long, and suddenly the doctor was telling me that someday had an expiration date, and it was coming up fast. I spent about 3 days just sitting in my armchair in the living room. Not watching television. Not reading. Just sitting. My son called, my daughter called, Lily came over every day. And I appreciated it, I did. But what I really needed in those 3 days was to just sit with it. To let the weight of it settle on me properly, so I could figure out what I actually felt. And what I felt, when I got honest with myself, surprised me. I wasn't as scared as I thought I'd be. I was something else. I was sorry. Not for myself. For all the time I'd wasted being busy with things that didn't matter while the things that did matter waited patiently in the corner. And that's when something shifted. I can't tell you exactly the moment it happened. It wasn't dramatic. There was no lightning bolt, no voice from above. It was quiet, actually. I woke up on the fourth morning, and I thought, well, if I've got 6 months, then I've got 6 months. And I'm not going to spend them sitting in this chair feeling sorry about time I can't get back. I'm going to spend them doing the things I should have been doing all along. And that decision, that quiet, ordinary decision made on an ordinary Tuesday morning in my armchair, that changed everything. I mean everything. The first thing I did was call my son Robert. Robert and we'd been close when he was young, but life does what life does, and somewhere in his 40s and my 70s, we drifted into a kind of polite distance. We talked on holidays. We sent cards. But the real conversations, the ones where you say what you actually mean, those had stopped somewhere along the way, and neither one of us quite knew how to start them again. So I called him. Not to tell him I was dying, he already knew. I called him to tell him I was sorry. For the times I'd been too hard on him. For the times I'd been too proud to say I was wrong. For the years of polite distance that I had allowed just as much as he had. And Robert was quiet for a long time on that phone. And then he said, "Dad, I'm sorry too." That was it. That was the whole conversation almost. And it was enough. More than enough. He drove up to see me the following weekend, and we sat on the porch and talked for 6 hours straight, and it felt like I got my son back. I got my son back at 88 years old, and I almost missed it entirely. Now I want to talk about the medical side of this, because I think it's important, and I don't want to mislead anybody. I followed my doctor's instructions. I took the medications, I made the changes he told me to make. Diet, rest, less stress, though that last one is easier said than done when your family is treating you like a piece of glass. I'm not telling you that I ignored the doctors and drank green juice and cured myself. That's not what happened. What happened is that my body responded better than expected. 3 months in, the numbers were better. 6 months in, the deadline that was supposed to be the end, I was still here. Still sitting in that armchair. Still drinking my morning coffee. Still watching the birds at the feeder outside my window. And the doctor, he sat back and he said, "George, I don't fully understand it, but you're doing better than we projected." And I said, "Doc, I had some things to take care of. My body knew it wasn't done yet." I believe that. I believe it completely. Not in some mystical way, though I'm not dismissing that either at my age. But I believe that something in a person knows when they have unfinished business. And I had unfinished business. I had phone calls to make and conversations to have and a son to sit with on a porch for 6 hours. And something in me wasn't ready to go until I'd done those things. So what changed? What actually changed? Because that's what I told Lily this was going to be about, and I'm going to deliver on that. Here's what changed. I stopped pretending that time was something I had plenty of. That's the biggest one. That's the one that runs underneath all the others. We all walk around, and I did this for decades, mind you, decades. We all walk around acting like there's always more time. More time to say the thing, to make the call, to fix the relationship, to take the trip, to sit quietly with the person you love without looking at the clock. And there isn't. There isn't always more time. Sometimes the doctor tells you 6 months and you have to decide very quickly what you're actually going to do with the time you have left, however long that turns out to be. I stopped pretending. And the moment I stopped pretending, I stopped wasting. The second thing that changed is I learned how to receive love. That sounds simple. It isn't. Men of my generation, and I suspect plenty of younger people too, were much better at giving than receiving. Someone tries to take care of you, you wave them off. You say you're fine. You don't want to be a burden. You don't want to need anything from anybody. But when Lily started coming over every Thursday, and she'd sit with me and ask me questions about my life, real questions, not polite questions, questions like, "Grandpa, what's the thing you're most proud of?" And, "What do you wish you'd done differently?" I let her in. I actually let her in. And it saved me. I mean that. That girl and those Thursday afternoons saved my life just as much as any medication. The third thing. I made peace with regret instead of running from it. This is a hard one. I had regrets. Real ones. Things I'd done, things I hadn't done, words I'd said that I couldn't take back, words I'd swallowed that I should have said. And for most of my life, I'd kept all of that in a box with a lid on it, because looking at it was too painful. But when you think you've got 6 months, you open the box. You have to. And what I found was that the regrets, when I actually looked at them instead of running from them, were survivable. They were painful, yes. But they didn't destroy me. And making peace with them, actually sitting with them and saying, "Yes, that happened, and I can't change it, and I forgive myself," that was the most freeing thing I've ever done in 91 years. More freeing than I expected. I slept better after I opened that box than I had in years. And the last thing. The thing I want you to hear most of all, whoever you are, whatever age you are watching this. I started paying attention. To everything. To my morning coffee. To the birds at the feeder. To the way the light comes through the kitchen window in the afternoon. To my granddaughter's laugh. To the sound of rain. I had lived 88 years and somewhere along the way I had stopped actually noticing my own life. I was in it but I wasn't paying attention to it. And when the doctor told me it might be ending, I started paying attention again. And the world, this same world I'd been living in for 9 decades, it was extraordinary. It had been extraordinary the whole time. I just hadn't been looking. 3 years later, I'm still here. Still in my armchair. Still watching those birds. Still having Thursday afternoons with Lily. Still talking to Robert. Still paying attention. And I don't know how much time I have left. None of us do. And that's the truth no matter what any doctor tells you. But I know this. The 3 years since that diagnosis have been some of the most alive years I've ever had. Not the easiest. Not the most comfortable. But the most alive. So here's what I want to say to you. And I mean this, so listen. You don't need a doctor to tell you 6 months. You don't need a diagnosis or a deadline to start living the way I started living after that appointment. You have people in your life right now. I know you do. People you've been meaning to call, things you've been meaning to say, boxes you've been afraid to open. Don't wait. Don't wait for the paper on the table that crinkles when you move and the careful look on the doctor's face. Open the box now. Make the call now. Sit on the porch with your son for 6 hours now. Pay attention to your life right now, today, while you still can and while the people you love are still here to pay attention to. That's all I've got. That's all this old man has. Now go on. You've got something to do. I know you do. Go do it.